Out of nowhere, a routine passenger flight turns into pure nightmare fuel when Jack is calmly mixing a drink in his seat and the plane suddenly gets slammed by violent turbulence. The aircraft shakes so hard that passengers without seatbelts are thrown through the cabin, oxygen masks drop from the ceiling, and then a massive pressure surge causes one of the wings to explode. The blast rips the rear section clean off the plane, sending terrified passengers plunging thousands of feet to their deaths, while the crippled aircraft spirals completely out of control toward a mysterious deserted island. Screams fill the cabin as the plane crashes through dense jungle and erupts in a fiery explosion. When Jack wakes up, he finds himself stranded in the middle of a thick forest. Following desperate cries for help, he discovers the crash site covered with wounded survivors and quickly gets to work saving lives because he's the only doctor on board. During the chaos, he spots a pregnant woman trapped beneath a shattered engine piece that's about to crush her and manages to pull her to safety just before another explosion rocks the wreckage. Despite his own injuries, Jack keeps helping survivors, but the earlier blast has already turned most of the injured passengers into corpses. Later, while trying to stitch up a wound on his arm, he realizes he can't reach it himself until a young woman named Kate offers to help. She's stunned when Jack barely reacts to the pain of getting stitched up without anesthesia, and the two quickly become allies. That night, Jack figures the cockpit may have survived the crash and could still contain a signal transmitter capable of contacting rescuers. Kate remembers seeing smoke rising from a distant valley earlier and believes that's where the cockpit landed. Hope begins to return, but suddenly, a terrifying roar echoes through the jungle. Massive trees start snapping one after another, making it clear that some gigantic creature is moving toward them. Luckily, it never reveals itself, and the forest eventually falls silent again. The next morning, everyone debates what they heard. Some think it was a dinosaur, others a giant monster, but fear spreads through the camp. Knowing their only chance of survival is reaching the cockpit, Jack heads into the jungle with Charlie and Kate. Heavy rain soon begins pouring from the sky, making their search even harder. Meanwhile, survivors hiding in the wreckage realize the mysterious creature is active again, though Jack's group remains unaware. After hours of searching, they finally locate the front section of the plane. Inside, every first-class passenger is dead. As Jack forces open the cockpit door, a corpse suddenly falls out, nearly scaring everyone to death. Once the panic settles, he enters the cockpit and starts searching for the transmitter. To his surprise, the pilot is still alive with only a head injury. The pilot explains that as they entered a strange section of ocean, all communication signals vanished. He tried turning the plane around, but a bizarre force of wind engulfed the aircraft and tore it apart midair before he blacked out. According to him, they may be thousands of miles away from civilization in an unknown location. He remembers a backup wireless system aboard the plane, but when they find it, the device is already destroyed. Just as hope begins fading again, a horrifying sound comes from outside, and the entire wreck starts shaking violently. A gigantic shadow passes the windows, making the aircraft tremble with each footstep. When the pilot moves closer to look outside, an unseen creature suddenly grabs him and drags him away. Kate screams as the monster brutally kills him before Jack can intervene. Moments later, the wreckage collapses from a tree, forcing the trio to flee into the jungle with the damaged signal device. Thankfully, the creature doesn't pursue them, and they eventually return to camp. Back at the camp, they find James and Curly in a heated fight. James suspects Curly caused the crash because everyone seated near him died, while Curly somehow survived. Tensions nearly explode until Kate reveals they recovered a signal device, although it's badly damaged. Nobody knows how to fix it except Curly, who reveals he used to be a military communications officer and has experience with similar equipment. After repairing the transmitter, he discovers the battery is nearly dead, and they'll need to reach a towering rock formation in the jungle to send a rescue signal. Kate isn't thrilled about risking her life again, but there's no alternative. She secretly leaves with 4 others while James follows behind. Along the way, he deliberately shoves Kate aside and continues acting like a jerk. Deep in the jungle, James keeps insulting Curly until strange noises erupt from the bushes. Everyone panics and runs except James, who calmly stands his ground and opens fire with a pistol. Even multiple shots barely affect the creature charging toward them, but one lucky bullet hits its weak spot. When they finally see what attacked them, they're shocked. It isn't a monster at all, but a gigantic polar bear. The discovery makes absolutely no sense because they're trapped on a hot tropical island. Even more suspicious is James carrying a gun aboard a passenger plane. He claims he took it from a dead police officer and proves it by showing a badge. Later, the repaired device suddenly receives a full signal. Curly tries transmitting a distress call, but realizes the rescue frequency is already occupied. That means someone else on the island is sending signals. Moments later, a woman's voice comes through. At first, everyone believes it's a rescue team, but they soon learn it's merely an old recording from a French woman begging for help. After checking the frequency, Curly discovers something even worse. The signal has been broadcasting continuously for 16 years without ever receiving a response. The revelation terrifies everyone. Questions pile up. What is the giant creature? How did a polar bear reach this island? Why did the plane fall apart in midair? It becomes obvious that the island is hiding a terrifying secret. The survivors return to camp and keep the truth hidden to avoid causing panic. That night, Michael's dog starts barking frantically. Jack investigates with a flashlight, but James impatiently activates a searchlight and reveals several huge wild boars lurking nearby. Instead of attacking, the animals suddenly flee into the forest. The next morning, another problem emerges. Their remaining food is gone. James accuses an overweight survivor of eating too much, and a fight breaks out until Jack intervenes. Realizing starvation could soon tear the group apart, they decide to hunt the boars. A bald survivor shocks everyone by opening his suitcase and revealing an entire collection of knives. He, Kate, and Michael head into the jungle to track the animals. After locating fresh signs, they prepare an ambush. Unfortunately, Michael accidentally alerts the boar, causing it to charge. The bald man dodges at the last second, while Michael gets clipped and suffers minor injuries. Kate wants to return to camp, but the bald man refuses to give up and continues hunting alone. As Kate and Michael leave, Kate suddenly removes part of her clothing and climbs a tree, confusing Michael. She's actually trying to improve the signal. While securing the device high above the ground, she hears a terrifying roar and spots the giant monster moving through the forest below. Elsewhere, the bald man finally hears the boar again, but its squeals suddenly turn into screams. Trees begin shaking, and a monstrous roar fills the jungle. Frozen with fear, he watches as the gigantic creature finally appears right in front of him. Back at camp, Kate tells Jack everything and fears the bald man is dead. Jack rushes into the forest, only to find the bald survivor stumbling out alive carrying a dead boar and covered in fresh blood. Proof he somehow survived a horrifying encounter. That night, the survivors gather to honor those who died in the crash. Michael asks the bald man if he really saw the monster, but he denies seeing anything. Although food is no longer a problem, fresh water soon will be. Without rescue, they won't survive long. Determined to contact the outside world, Curly secretly returns to the mountain with the radio. Just as he begins transmitting, someone sneaks up behind him, knocks him unconscious, smashes the device, and disappears. The attacker clearly wants the survivors trapped on the island. Convinced another human is secretly living there, Curly sets out alone the next day to uncover the truth. After wandering for hours, he discovers a thick steel cable buried in the sand. One end disappears into the ocean while the other leads into the jungle. Following it deeper inland, he suddenly notices hidden wires and realizes he's entered a deadly trap zone. He carefully steps forward, but a loud click echoes beneath him. Instantly, a sharpened branch launches upward and impales his leg. Writhing in agony, Curly somehow pulls the spike free before blood loss causes him to pass out. Hours later, after night has fallen, he slowly regains consciousness. Just as he's about to call for help, a mysterious man appears out of nowhere and cuts him down. What starts as a desperate search mission quickly spirals into a full-blown nightmare when Curly suddenly crashes headfirst onto the ground after being freed from the trap. Dazed and barely conscious, he catches a glimpse of a mysterious man walking toward him before blacking out again. The next morning, he wakes up to an unnaturally dark sky and immediately gets a terrible feeling that something horrible is about to happen back at camp. Ignoring the agony in his injured leg, he rushes back as fast as he can. Unfortunately, the nightmare has already begun. A pregnant survivor named Anna suddenly wakes up from her sleep and is horrified to discover that her unborn baby seems to be missing. Then she hears the sound of a baby crying somewhere nearby. Following the cries, she comes across the bald man with the blackened eye, who's muttering strange prophecies and acting incredibly creepy. Even though his appearance is unsettling, Anna keeps moving forward until she reaches a baby carriage covered with a white cloth. The crying is clearly coming from inside. Gathering her courage, she pulls back the cloth, only to find chunks of flesh instead of a baby. The horrifying sight makes her scream at the top of her lungs. Charlie rushes over after hearing the scream, but by then, Anna is completely hysterical and starts attacking people around her. He eventually calms her down, and everyone assumes she just had a terrifying nightmare. But when they notice blood on her hands, panic starts spreading through the camp. The following morning, Jack examines her injuries and discovers that she squeezed her fists so tightly during the nightmare that her fingernails dug into her palms and caused the bleeding. Everyone breathes a sigh of relief relief, believing the mystery is solved. But that relief doesn't last long. Later that night, Anna suddenly wakes up screaming, convinced that someone is stabbing her in the stomach. The survivors rush to her side, but there's nobody there. Terrified, she insists she was attacked, yet when Jack checks her stomach, there isn't a single wound. He assumes the stress of pregnancy and the island's horrors are causing hallucinations, and tells her to get some rest. That response only makes Anna furious. She feels like Jack doesn't believe a word she's saying, so she grabs her belongings and storms off into the jungle. Charlie can't stand watching her leave alone and immediately follows her. Not long afterward, Anna is struck by severe stomach pain. Charlie panics and decides to send Jim to fetch Jack while he stays with her. What Charlie doesn't realize is that this decision is about to unleash a disaster for everyone. As Anna's pain gradually fades, she and Charlie start heading back toward camp. Along the way, Jim suddenly appears, but instead of bringing Jack, he's staring at Anna with a deeply unsettling look. At that same moment, Curly limps back into camp and tells Jack that someone else is living on the island. Before Jack can process that shocking news, the overweight survivor comes running in with another bombshell. Another passenger survived the crash and has been hiding this entire time, and his name is Jim. The moment Jack hears that, his blood runs cold. Realizing Anna and Charlie could be in serious danger, he immediately heads into the jungle with the bald man to find them. Sadly, they're already too late. When they arrive, all they find are signs of a struggle. Anna and Charlie have vanished without a trace. The bald man suggests returning to camp for supplies first, but Jack is overwhelmed with guilt. He keeps replaying Anna's warnings in his head and blames himself for not believing her. Driven by regret, he charges into the jungle alone and starts searching frantically. Before long, he notices something strange. He keeps ending up in the same spot over and over again, as if the forest itself is trapping him in a maze. Eventually, the bald man and the others catch up, and the search resumes. Their first break comes when they find a torn piece of Charlie's clothing, proving they're on the right track. Soon, they reach a fork in the trail with footprints leading in two different directions. To cover more ground, they split up. The bald man heads one way while Jack and Kate take the other. Then the weather turns against them. A heavy downpour begins, washing away tracks and making the search nearly impossible. After wandering through the storm for what feels like forever, Jack finds another scrap of Charlie's clothing and realizes they must be getting close. Then, out of nowhere, he hears Anna screaming in agony. Following the sound, Jack rushes up a steep hillside with Kate close behind. But in his haste, he loses his grip and tumbles down the slope. As he struggles to get back up, he suddenly finds Jim standing directly in front of him. Without saying much, Jim kicks him hard and warns him to stop following them or Charlie will die. Jack isn't about to back down. He grabs Jim's leg and throws him aside before charging straight at him. What follows is a brutal fight. Jim effortlessly dodges Jack's punches and responds with a barrage of devastating blows. Within moments, Jack is sprawled across the ground. Even then, he refuses to quit and keeps trying to fight back, but every attack misses. Jim lands one final crushing kick that knocks Jack unconscious. A short time later, Kate finds him lying there. Once he regains consciousness, he immediately insists on continuing the search. Kate points out that the rain has erased nearly every clue, and that finding Charlie now is almost impossible. Jack refuses to listen and pushes forward anyway, forcing Kate to follow. After hours of searching, they finally spot something horrifying, a gigantic tree with Charlie hanging from it high above the ground. Jack sprints toward him and quickly cuts him down. But the moment Charlie hits the ground, reality sets in. He's not breathing. Jack desperately tries to revive him while Kate breaks down in tears. Refusing to accept the loss of his closest friend, Jack keeps pounding on Charlie's chest again and again. Kate sobs uncontrollably as the hopeless rescue attempt continues. After countless failed tries, Jack throws one final desperate punch, and suddenly Charlie gasps for air. Against all odds, he's alive. And that unbelievable moment brings part 1 to an end. But things are only getting darker from here because in part 2, Charlie reveals horrifying secrets about the jungle that will make everyone question everything they thought they knew about the island. Would you survive a place like this? Let me know.